Hello, athletes. Coach Blu Robinson here. Going to give a second to let some people jump on board. Going to get our co-host, Marissa. While we get our co-host, Marissa, ready to rock. If you have any questions for me today, it doesn't have to just be drugs, alcohol, recovery. Could be whatever you're dealing with, whatever you got going on. Could be an athletic question. Could be anything. Just jump on. Let's get going. Go. Okay. Perfect. No one's on yet, but if you want to jump on here, you can, the link on the Facebook page, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Our website under recovery tools.
So under recovery tools on addicttoathlete.org or on our public page, just one down from this live video or one or two down below, you can click through the links to become a panelist on today's show, and we'd love to chat with you. But anything, doesn't have to just be addictions or addiction recovery. Could be therapeutic needs. It could be counsel. Could be ideas you have. Shoot, I would love to know if you are training for any kind of event coming up. The fact that there is an event coming up would be awesome, just to kind of see how this COVID pandemic reality check's gone for you. Got some neat things on Team Addict to Athlete. We're expanding our program significantly all over the country and world, hopefully. And we are training sober coaches. So if you've ever had a desire to want to help and give back to your community, maybe even start a chapter of Addict to Athlete or become just a trained in addiction, recovery specialist yourself, jump on our webpage, addicttoathlete.org, and see how the training is going to be. We've certified about 22 coaches so far, many of them outside of the state of Utah, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
Yeah, and we've got the chance to meet a couple of our coaches over this last experience we had with the 2020 Break the Cycle relay. A relay that we did to bring awareness to the drug and alcohol epidemic that's still plaguing our country. And really to kind of get the mindset going of, we can't do this alone. We have to rely on each other and one another to get this stuff done. And so, yeah, the channels are open. So go ahead and jump onto the Zoom meeting. Marissa will escort you through the attendee column where you can just kind of listen, put you into a panelist where you can jump on with me, and just know that you're being broadcast live on Facebook. And soon will be posted to YouTube. So make sure that you know that if you're jumping on here, you're aware of Addict to Athlete's non-anonymity clause, which is we don't believe in anonymity in this day and age. We really do hold firm to the fact that anonymity in 2020 is a death sentence. And so we practice that principles that you apply into recovery needs to be shared. And so there's nothing to be ashamed of. But more so, if you have a training question, if you have an athletic question, if you have anything that you want to discuss, this is kind of the time. But Marissa and I've also gone through a few things just in case, some people were nervous at first. And we have some stuff we want to chat about specifically to the viewer here on Facebook Live and hopefully maybe even start some dialogue. And we cover lots of topics. I myself am an addiction specialist. I'm a licensed substance use counselor. I think that's now a substance use disorder counselor and a licensed mental health clinician. So I do both therapy and drug addictive counseling. So kind of duly licensed there. And because of such, I've been able to kind of broaden my horizon, just a little bit more than just, addictions and addiction recovery, getting into mental health issues, getting into all kinds of family systems and things of that nature. Marissa Robinson, who is our athletic director, and like I said, my wife, she is a recreational therapist, a certified recreational therapist, which is kind of a really cool degree. And if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend researching it. But basically, she takes and uses recreation and appropriate leisure time and all kinds of experiences that bring anxiety and helps people get through that through experiential therapy and experiential activities. And being able to assist in building Addict to Athlete with that expertise has been phenomenal.
You're good at describing that.
Is that right? After 20 years of marriage, is that okay? Well, good. I like it. But even beyond that, we have some topics that I want to discuss, and there's been a few people that have jumped on and asked questions specifically. And if you have a question and you don't want to jump on Zoom, post on the Facebook page, and we will go through and jump on there.
I also added the link to the top of the description if they want to join in the webinar and be able to be online right there.
Okay, perfect. So there's a lot of degrees of participation that you can have. But Marissa, we got emailed a couple weeks ago, specifically from a parent who was having trouble with a video game, what they thought was a video game addicted child. And this is something we're going to start seeing a lot more of in the future. And the thing you have to understand about addiction is we don't want to use the term so lightly and use it so frivolously that we lose its meaning. Too much of anything, quote unquote, can make you an addict, right? Well, there's a few things that we want to make sure that you're aware of before you start dabbling in the "you're addicted" clause, because really that's a very powerful word, and we want to make sure that we get it right. Now, there's a few degrees, and they've changed the old DSM. It's the Bible of disorders for any therapist. They have it on their shelves, and I don't like using it because it means we have to label people, and I don't like doing that as much. But in order to get your degree, you have to go through the class, and you got to learn how to do it. But back before they did some rearranging, I really loved the way that we were able to identify addictive behaviors and the difference between abuse and dependence. And in my career of almost 20 years, a little over 20 years of doing this now, I've noticed that we've used to use the dependent clause a lot, and we used to diagnose folks with dependence quite a bit because they fell into two categories. One was being a marked tolerance, meaning using the same substance or the same addictive substance to a degree where you had to start using more in order to feel the same effect. So you build tolerance. So you start here, and after a while, you have to start using more and more in order to start feeling the same. And so, of course, you start developing a tolerance, which means you start using and using and using. And it can really kind of wreak havoc on your lifestyle. The second one is once you stop using that substance is, do you have a marked withdrawal? Do you feel withdrawal symptoms after you've stopped using? And they took those two things and started realizing that would kind of be like what an addiction would kind of look like. That would be the theme, the golden thread, if you will. And the interesting thing about that is, we used to categorize quite a few people into the degree of dependence, but that means that you are dependent upon the substance or the behavior or what have you in order to kind of feel normalized. Well, I started thinking more about that. I thought it's interesting because most of the clients that I work with, specifically in an outpatient setting, I found that they were typically self-medicating, anxiety, depression, mental health, whatnot, with a substance. And I started thinking that once we were able to introduce other ways to achieve maybe the same kind of feeling of well-being, I started noticing that they didn't have to abuse that drug as much. And I started realizing that we have a lot more people that abuse certain situations, certain substances, intoxicants, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling. They abuse it more than they are dependent on it. And I know this kind of flies in the face of a lot of things that you hear out there. And trust me, we've been the recipient of a lot of hate mail, which is fine. There's a lot of different things that go into this. It's a science, I understand, but there's also a lot of degrees to it. And one day we should get on the soapbox of, is it a disease or is it a choice or what is it? And yes, it's both. But what I want to kind of focus on here today is not taking that word addiction, addicted, lightly. And there was some research that just came out from Brigham Young University of all places, which is right here in our backyard, that talks specifically about video game addiction. And we can't put it in the same model as a substance abuse issue because there's a lot of factors to this. And the findings might really surprise you. And so, Marissa, do you want to read to the viewers and the listeners a little bit about this? I'm going to turn the mic so that you can get a direct shot at it, and just maybe read this study, and we'll post this so you guys can read it for yourself.
So this was published, or it came out May 13th, so just barely, from Brigham Young University. It's a recent 6-year study. It's the longest study ever done on video game addiction. They found that about 90% of gamers do not play in a way that is harmful or causes negative long-term consequences. A significant minority, though, can become truly addicted to video games, and as a result can suffer mentally, socially, and behaviorally, which is, I mean, that's shocking to me. That only, because I always hear, oh, my husband, oh, my boyfriend, oh, quite a bit about this. And to know that 90%, like, let me see if I can find. So it said,
very interesting,
that there were two main predictors for the video game addiction. And one was being a male, which
Go
I just
figure.
said, husband, boyfriend. And the other is having low levels of pro-social behavior. Do you want to describe what that means for a quick minute before I explain the other? What is a pro-social behavior?
Okay. So let's describe this just a little bit. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves, but think about it this way too. Obviously there needs to be time limits and considerations that are met and experienced when your kids are playing games. Mercy, my kids play Fortnite like it's going out of style. And so much so that when we first started having this little gaming system, oh doofus me, I didn't realize the significance behind it. Plugging your card inside there, and long story short, in a month's time, they racked up an $800+ bill on flipping Fortnite. So the experience about that was I had to take kind of it on the chin a little bit and kind of explain to the kids, like, this is real money, this is real stuff. And part of that was my fault for not being the parent that was kind of having more of a stewardship or thumb on it. Since all that's gone and has been water under the bridge, and part of their punishment was to learn every dance move that they bought so that they could do it in real life to impress the ladies when they get older. It was more about being able to explain to them the limits and boundaries. Now, granted, it's still one of these things where there's relationships, there are real relationships that are established, even though it may be online. Now, here's the funny thing, right, is I was talking with a young man who's 20+ years of age just recently, and he was saying that a lot of his family members were getting upset because he was spending a lot of time of his free time in this Fortnite realm. And what they're kind of start wrapping their heads around is that this really is a method and a outlet for sportsmanship, which is bizarre because that's not what we kind of channel it as. We look at situations like, stock car racing and Indy car racing, all those kind of things. Is that really sport? Is bowling a sport? Well, yeah, they are to their own right and their own degree. And so I really do think that we have to be cautious about this, because these relationships, although, exponentially out of our reach and maybe through the avatar of the character, they are very real. And so, I was talking to this young man about, would your parents still have the same kind of viewpoints and mindsets if you were, coming home to go to the gym, to go to the pool, to go to to go out and ride your bike, to do your running, if you're going to do an Ironman triathlon? And because it doesn't sit in that mindset that we have of, like, what physical exercise looks like, we kind of dumb it down and we kind of put it in a classification of it's Pac-Man and Pong, right? But it's not. And so this study is very interesting because of what it does. And, we start looking at the significance behind the bigger parts of video game addiction. And when it's, again, we look at it as tolerance and look at it through the degree of withdrawal. My kids, they've been playing it a lot, specifically during the quarantine. They can't go out and play with their friends. And so we are now having to reel it in, limiting the amount of Wi-Fi they have, being able to get the boys that are on, in their squads in real life to go out there and have water balloon fights. But remember, that means that it also puts us as parents into the mindset of parenting out of our inconvenience, meaning in order for them to give up something as significant as a video game that they're playing, we have to also provide outlets and time of our own to help engage them into outdoor activities. They're going to drag their feet and pout when you're going up to the reservoir to float in your kayaks or to go to the pool or go on a hike. Make it fun, and then give them the time that they have, like, I guess allotted, for that experience. So taking it away is a bad idea because of the significance of what it means to them. If it's important to them, it should be important to you. There's a lot we can do on this, but I now see that we have some attendees that are having some questions and whatnot. So let's move over and
Selena go first. She has her hand up.
Mm-hmm. I thought that Jason was on there first,
yes,
but
and I'm chatting with him.
Okay, let's go with Selena. You go ahead and put them over. And
Hi.
Hello, Selena. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. Yeah, fire away.
Okay. My question is, as I'm dealing with kind of a change in my life right now, and with my injury. So my question is on some tips. I don't always deal with change well. It kind of throws me really hard sometimes. So I just wanted to get some tips on how we deal healthily with change in our lives.
You bring up a good point. Now, change is one of those things that you can almost guarantee is going to happen in life, right? Nothing ever just comes to stay, right? If you read in any kind of scriptorial book, you'll read that, and it came to pass. Nothing ever just comes to stay. And so change is inevitable, but how you adapt to the change is significant. Have you ever read the books or heard of the books? It's a business kind of model. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? You ever heard of this?
I haven't.
It's a great book. And in fact, if you Google it or you look it up on YouTube, there's a great little cartoon that goes along. Basically, the premise is this. It's these two little guys and these two little mice who are kind of in like a maze. And every day the guys go out and the mice go out and they run the maze and they find their cheese, right? And it gets so consistent that they can just rely on it. But one of the guys is kind of looking at this thing, and everyone's eating this big pile of cheese that seems abundant and just never ending. And the mice kind of start taking some stewardship checks at this, and they're like, our cheese is starting to get a little bit low. So they start venturing deeper into the maze to find more cheese, while the other guys are like, it's always going to be here. Nothing's going to change. Well, eventually the cheese runs out. The mice are already out in the maze finding more. And the guys are kind of stuck behind thinking, well, who moved our cheese? Well, no one moved your cheese. You guys, you used it all. And the premise is them kind of dragging their feet about what do we do? How, like they're so mad that someone moved their cheese that they just are stuck. And the one guy is so just bent on the fact that it's going to come back and they're going to bring it back. And the other one's like, I think we need to get out there deeper in the maze. But the other guy's like, we can't go out there. It's scary. The whole premise is about moving forward and being able to experience and be willing to experience the unknown. And so change has a lot of the unknown because we don't really wrap our heads around what it's going to look like. We fantasize tremendously on what this change might look like. And I'll tell you, unless we know for sure, we guess, and we always guess wrong. So whatever change you think is going to happen, if we look at the negative side of it and we use like a fear-based mentality where we're afraid of it, guess what you're going to get? Fear, right? But if you use that same principle, but with a different concept of faith, the whole thing turns upside down. Faith and fear are the exact same principle with very different outcomes. And so I like to teach people to look at, change is inevitable. It's going to happen. But why don't you apply a little faith instead of fear? But you got to remember, Selena, our minds and our brains and our concepts are all structured around being afraid of change, because it's going to disrupt the homeostasis, that normal like life that we just are yearning to live. But think about it, right? How many times have you had to endure change and it hasn't been as bad as you might have thought? Or even if it was as bad as you perceived, you're still here, so you somehow got through it, right?
Right,
So I
that's
think
true.
we look at that mentality, and I call it the victim versus the agent mentality. The victim is telling you to be afraid of change. It's worrisome, just like that little guy in the maze, and you can get mad and angry at it. But that faith concept of being an agent, being able to act independently and to become self-reliant on your decisions, faith is the same thing, but it has a different outcome. It's like a belief in something that you really can't see, but you're willing to kind of like advance towards. And so I would say, look at whatever you have coming down the pipeline through the eyes of faith and avoid fear. And then, I say this, it usually takes on average 3 seconds of courage to do anything. Whether it's 3 seconds of courage to walk up to a podium and begin your speech, or whether it's 3 seconds of courage to push that last button on the cell phone, or if it's, to push the send button on a purchase or something, it takes 3 seconds of courage to do anything. Think about how powerful that is. So I hope that
wow.
a little bit, just the
Never thought of
mentality of
that.
it all. Yeah, just the mentality of it, and it's helped me significantly.
That's great. Great advice. Yeah, I've always had trouble like getting out of my comfort zone. So,
Yeah.
That's part of change. And I always do look at it as the worst scenario. So yeah, thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for jumping on board. So yeah, viewers, again, the mindset of fear and faith. I mean, if you don't learn anything today from this little one-on-one with Coach Blu, take that to heart. It's significant because so many of us are worried about, what we don't know. And you can be afraid or you can have courage. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Marissa, what's on next?
Jason loaded up.
Okay.
So Jason, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, if you'd like to turn on your camera, you can. You don't need to.
Hey, I'm here. I'm just trying to figure out how to turn my camera on.
You're doing great.
Yeah,
Let's see. All right. Not sure how to do it.
That's
So
okay.
Jason's an
Yes.
old neighbor of mine.
Oh, McElbrain. I've heard that last name many a time. So yeah,
Oh, have ya?
I've heard
Right
of
on,
that
right
last
on.
name. Yeah.
He's been
Cool.
to
Hey,
Lake with us a few times, right?
oh yeah. Yes, we have.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Good to see you.
So, good. So, well, I'd like to say the same, but good to hear you.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I'm fresh out of rehab. Just looking for some connection, ready to get running. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to get healthy, want to be around some good people and, maybe do some running, get a marathon under my belt, something like that.
Yeah, man, it's awesome because one of the biggest things, again, if you start looking at that change is like, all right, so what do we do when like that section of time is over, right? I mean, how crazy is it that like you go from kind of having like, dare we say like a thumb on top of you to like newfound freedom, And so the fact that you're even looking for the support system is huge because a lot of times we feel like we're so green that we're almost nervous to ask for help. And so, hey, kudos to you, man.
Right on,
And
thanks.
the fact that you finished and completed is amazing. So well done. The second part of that too, brother, is like setting these goals now that you kind of have now a little bit of a habit starting. Like what I mean by that is you've got some goals that you've already reached, right? I mean, whatever treatment goals you establish with your counselor, your therapist in treatment, it has been obviously like achieved, or else you wouldn't be talking to me. You'd still be in there.
That's right.
You're on a roll right now, man. It feels good. And so really it's kind of like how far do you want to take this, right? I mean, we live in that mindset of instant gratification, but delayed gratification comes when you start really kind of getting in the mindset of becoming from addict to athlete. It's like you got to do some training, you got to get yourself up to par.
Sure.
And then once you start doing that with a team behind you, you've got that self concept of like, I don't have to identify that anymore. Start feeling that mechanism of service. And really you start achieving goals without you even realizing that they're happening, man. So I think you're spot on. So you're wanting to look at doing like literally like one day, a marathon?
No, well, yeah, one day. I've had that goal for a long time. I've been around a lot of runners. My dad was a runner. And,
yeah.
So it's kind of a goal. I would like to do it, get healthy and do that.
Absolutely.
His dad and Gary are really good friends, and my dad.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, so
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Mr. McElbrain, they used to hang out a lot, huh?
Yeah, I used to run with them, but never could keep up. That's for sure.
I'm with you on that, man. I married into this family. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right on.
But you know what though? It's cool because we just done with this thing we call Break the Cycle. It was it's a thing we do where we do a little relay race. It's 150 something miles, and each athlete takes a 5 mile like shot. They just go do it, right? And the cool this is it doesn't matter how fast you go. It just matters that you have enough courage to start. And so I'll tell you, brother, in Addict Athlete, we talk about these two concepts. We talk about the concept of a DNS and a DNF. You probably know what a DNF is if you have a family member that runs or if you've ever done anything. It's a did not finish, right? And you never want to be out there on a run and then have something go down or have have some self-doubt or just feel like you can't finish and then take a knee in the middle of it. Because then you don't get this year, you don't get the cool stuff that comes along with finishing. But more important is never to get a DNS, which is a did not start. That means you didn't even have enough strength or enough willpower or enough whatever to get to the starting line. So DNFs, I kind of understand. Sometimes things go wrong that you can't plan for. But the DNS is something, this just, you never want that. So the fact that you've already started this recovery process tells me that you're in it now to keep moving forward. And so
yes, sir.
The best thing we can get you to do is just trust yourself enough to reach out like you're doing, to come hang out with the team, to meet people, and to know that we're not looking for bigger, badder, faster, stronger. We're looking for what's in here to help keep you moving forward. And the coolest part about that is once you establish yourself on the team, man, you're not getting away because these relationships they build, they're huge. And last night I had kind of an emotional little meeting with our athletes and I got a little bit upset with them. And I said, don't come on this team if you're just going to build a relationship and jump ship. because these relationships are serious, man. Like if you're part of this team, you are part of this team. And what happens is we get some people that get in there to get some self-doubt. They start, they stop losing that focus and those goals, and they kind of drift away. And then we read about them in the paper and we're like, oh man,
Right.
So
I've been following you guys for a minute, quite a
Good.
while. I just haven't, dared yet to get off my butt and get going. So I'm ready.
Yeah, man. And
Yeah,
that's, what you're not the only one that feels that way. So many people come on the team and they think they have to be world-class athletes, and they don't.
No.
The
Yeah.
biggest thing is having enough courage to come start. And so, and
True
it's
that.
awesome because really you know it, and being accountable to something or someone, obviously it's a mechanism of desire to change, and you're already on that process, man. So good job. How long were you in treatment for? I mean,
I did a 30-day.
good for
Yeah,
you,
30
man.
days. So yeah.
Awesome.
And
So you could do
it was quite the
aftercare?
experience. I am. I'm trying to do some aftercare. I'm
Good.
just working those kinks out right now.
Awesome.
So I'll have a pretty busy schedule, but definitely try to start running in the morning.
For sure. Yeah.
Get me some practice in so I don't look like a fool when I come out with you guys.
Well, absolutely. And here's the deal. Like, I don't know what size shoe you wear, but we just got a grundle of donations. So if you need 10.5 running
Right
shoes,
on.
if you are that size,
How'd you guess?
Yeah. It's like a standard issue size. I've noticed, like all of us folks are about that range, but we have a ton. So if you need running shoes, we've got more than enough, man. Yeah. So Ultra hooked us up, and
Heck yeah.
we can get those over to you, get them out to you somehow.
Where are you living now, Jason?
Where are you at?
I'm in Ogden. So
perfect.
I'm up north in Ogden. Yeah.
So we have a brand new chapter of Addict to Athlete that's starting up there in Weber County, right?
I think they're going to do the meeting at Alpha Counseling.
Alpha Counseling? I'm not sure where that is.
Alta Counseling. Okay.
Alpha.
Yeah.
Like
Alpha.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly when they're starting, but they should be starting soon. I will be checking with them.
Awesome.
We would love to come up there and visit and bring up some shoes too.
Yeah, man.
That'd be awesome. Heck yeah.
We'll get you hooked up. There's no excuse, man. You'll have brand new shoes. You'll have a brand new team. It's perfect timing, man.
Appreciate you guys. That's awesome.
Hey,
so how do I contact you guys other than on Facebook?
That's the best way. But our contact information is on the website too, and it's
okay.
Yep, phone numbers, emails, all on the website. And I think there's a link to the website on the Facebook page, right?
Yes.
Addict2athlete.org.
.org. Okay.
Yep. We have podcasts
right on, guys.
there. We've got videos, all kinds of stuff, man. So welcome to the team, brother. Like, let's take your mark. We'll get you going.
That. Right on. We'll be seeing you guys.
Awesome, brother. Thank you for checking in.
You bet. Take care.
Thanks.
So that's what's kind of cool too. I love it when the new members start feeling like a little bit more confident to jump on and to start asking, hey, how do I get this? How do I get this moving? How do I get this? How do I get this going?
There's somebody I'm trying to see if they want to log on and ask a question.
Okay.
But somebody online asked, I have medical problems that led me to getting a medical THC card. Mm-hmm. And now to do a series of events, I'm trying not to take the THC. And now I'm back to being really sick and unable to do anything. Please help. Okay.
You bring up a really good point.
Her name's Melanie.
Melanie, thank you for asking that question. This is a hard one for people in recovery. Okay. And there's a lot to this question. Okay. But I also need to be very, very thorough with you and say, I'll have this conversation with many people, and I'll be honest with you, there is not a one size fits all with this answer. And part of this means that there's still a lot of ongoing stuff that needs to take place when we start looking at, in the recovery world, is abstinence the only way, with the only mechanism of assistance being from a prescription written from a doctor? Or do we start looking at some of these other areas of natural healing? Now, if you would have caught me a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have been very much against this kind of stuff because there's still not a lot of research out on it. But I've been talking to people that have been using THC and CBD oils specifically for the use of anxiety and of CBD with natural healing and things of that nature. And the jury's out in my mind. I'm not as staunch as I once was, but the mechanism of delivery has to be very, very like pure, meaning smoking marijuana is the stupidest thing you can do because you cannot control or regulate the dose. It'd be like breaking down a pill and trying to smoke it to get a better high off of it. Anyone that has struggled with addiction in the past, I would be very cautious with going down this line. It's not impossible, but I would counsel extreme caution because of the mechanism and the tools of abuse. But I also know that when you find something that works, it's really hard to say you can't do that anymore because, you know, typically what I've seen with people that have been prescribed medication that they need to use, they don't abuse it because of the reasons that they're on it. I mean, meaning it works for them, so they don't want to abuse it for the potential and the risk of losing it. So the interesting thing about this is, you know, looking at why are you using it? Why is THC or why is the CBD oil like being prescribed? And, you know, a lot of people give this a really bad face when they do stupid things with it. And what I mean by that is, you know, people that really need medical, you know, cannabis and they use it the way that it's, you know, should be designed to be used. They get a bad rap by the people that like use it as a lifestyle instead of like a mechanism to help. And so when you use, you know, weed or marijuana as a lifestyle and it's like, hey man, you know, roll it up a doobie, it's 420. That kind of crap is stupid and really puts a ding on anyone else who needs that stuff possibly for, you know, for epilepsy or for things that it could possibly work for. And it was interesting. I was having this conversation just today with one of my athletes and one of my folks, and we got very serious into it. And I could see the difference between the way it was being used with this individual versus the way that it's been used as kind of like a mechanism to get high. So really, it's kind of one of these things where, you know, in the neighboring states from Utah, on both sides of us, you know, it's legal in Colorado, it's legal in Nevada. We have to be super, super cautious with what we're using it for. Now, the reason why I could be a little bit less extreme with the client I was speaking with today about this was because he doesn't have a history of addiction and he uses it the appropriate way by which to dispense and can regulate the dose because he's not smoking it, you know. But I said, like how I opened this whole meeting today, if you start realizing that you're taking more to get the same high or the same like feeling or the same like mechanism to soothe whatever ailment has been prescribed for, we have a problem. We got to be cautious with that. And so using it as it's prescribed, I think is one thing. Now in Utah, we're looking at doing some changing in laws and you know, I'm kind of for it as long as it's for the purpose of, you know, not making it, yeah, man, let's go, you know, vape it and crap like that. Don't fall into that category. If you specifically need this, you know, and for whatever purpose it is, and your doctor helps, you know, you see the coins on both sides, then I'd say be cautious with it, but follow his orders. But if it's ever become a problem, and if you have that problem in the past, I would be very weary about its ability to really kind of get you to where you want to be. Now, that being said, you know, prescription medications and everything, you know, we got to be so careful with this stuff because of the huge ramifications and side effects that could potentially put you at risk. And so, you know, there's never a foolproof, you know, I think medication that's going to be just a wonder drug. So I would proceed with caution, but I'd also say, you know, I hope that one day we can have this conversation with less of a stigma, that the people that put a bad face on it by like being careless and stupid with it can kind of start, you know, maybe addressing the reasons they need to use it. So the people that really could benefit from it can have the value of it. And again, if we would have been having this conversation, you know, even 6 months ago, I would have been like, I don't know, you know, but I also know that it does work for some people. And so putting a blanket statement out there saying that, you know, anyone that uses THC or CBD oil, you know, for whatever, you know, we got to be cautious. And then again, where are you getting it? Everyone and their dog's coming up with a shop. And so be careful with what you're getting. It is still a very new industry and a very new mechanism for assistance. And it is not a cure-all. it is not like used for pain and all this stuff. I know that some people say it works and stuff. Well, that's not even what it's designed for. That's not even what the chemical components do through THC. So calling it a miracle drug or a wonder drug should be very cautious, because it's not those things. And so when we promise those things to people and give them false hope, they end up abusing it because they're really searching for that high and not for that solution. So I would be cautious with it, but I'd also say if it's in your area and if it's legal and if it's something that's proven to help, keep close ties with the doctor. Be very cautious about how you're using it. And if there's addictive tendencies or potential, jump on. Maybe we have a one-on-one session. Maybe we talk about, mechanisms that we can use that will help, fill in some of those gaps without using. But really, to come on here and to say that it's all horrible and for you never to do that, I can't do that, because I'm seeing it work for people. And again, the individual I talked to does not have an addiction history. And so there's a big difference between the conversation I had with them versus what I would tell someone who wants to use it, as a, well, I don't want to drink anymore, so I just want to, smoke weed. If you're smoking marijuana, off the table. That's not even a no. If you're using it as doctor prescribed, then we can talk. So I hope that helps a little bit. It's a stigma.
Yeah. Additional stuff. I think it's you mentioned that there's not a regulation with a lot of it, and so you don't really know what's in it, how much, what's the potency.
You got to be careful.
So there's a lot of variables that people don't always.
There are a lot of variables. Yeah.
But she also mentioned wanting to stop taking it. Do you have any tips on if maybe she is noticing that an addictive behavior?
I think I would have to know. Yeah.
Getting sick. How does she cut it down or quit?
So this is an interesting thing. I just read an article, and I was going to do, in fact, not too long ago, I was going to do a very big video about this, specifically about how people, because I've heard this quite a bit. People can say, I can stop doing this, I can stop drinking, I can stop doing that, but I can't stop smoking weed. And everyone starts telling me that, marijuana isn't addictive. And, tomato. Yeah, it is. And it's not just physical, because physical dependence and addiction is a little bit different than the mental, because mental is 1,000 times harder to get over than the physical stuff. And so even if you feel yourself not being physically addicted to it, you are mentally and emotionally, addicted to it. And so if it's something that you're wanting to get away from, we start looking at why was it being used in the first place? What was it that drew you towards it? Remember I was talking at the very beginning about the dependence and about the tolerance and about the abuse versus dependence. I'm kind of prone to start seeing more people being in the mindset of abusing the drug than being dependent on the drug. And so if we look at why you were using it in the first place, and this is something that again could be, maybe talked about or processed, off this, and maybe one-on-one, but we look at what was it you being used for, and then we start looking at, okay, so if it was to, if it was to calm anxiety, if it was to help with sleep, if it was to help with these things, let's find out why on the flip side you couldn't do those things. Substance use is a symptom to something deeper. So like, let's say you have generalized anxiety disorder and you've been diagnosed with that. Generalized anxiety disorder comes through a lot of aversion therapy, where you start having to do therapy through the experiences, and sometimes it's related to trauma. And so we start working on trauma. And so really you start opening doors that a lot of people don't want to open, to kind of discover what's the core issue that's causing the symptoms of desire to use, of using the drug, of avoiding, processing, talking about it. And a lot of the time when we drill down on the core reason, the core issue, and we learn legitimate reasons and ways to get done with that and to crush and kill the core issue that caused the addiction in the first place, you almost find that you don't need it anymore. And so there's a lot to that question. So it probably almost be too difficult to answer you directly on that, because I need to get to know you a little bit more personally. I'd probably get to know you and why it was happening in the first place. But if you have a desire to stop, reach out to us. We will help you, get off of it and maybe find something that's a little bit better. And, again, this is a journey that you don't have to do alone. That's why you have Team Addict Athlete behind you. You shouldn't have to do this alone. And we shouldn't just put you in a position where we give you just some counsel and some tools. If you need counseling or therapy, reach out to us. We can make that happen and kind of get you kind of, some more armor, maybe some more some more padding for that field of battle, so you're not walking out onto the field, playing a football game, wearing just like a tracksuit. Let's get you some pads and some helmets and stuff so you can learn how to fight this and combat it. So reach out to us if you want more information on discovering that core issue, working through trauma through EMDR. Coach Blu certified in doing that. So let me know, because we'd be more than happy to help. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I like that. And again, that discussion about medical marijuana and stuff, again, it gets a bad rap because of all of the shenanigans and whatnot that's been attached to it. I wouldn't recommend anyone that struggled with addiction, like extreme addiction. I wouldn't convince yourself that it's okay. And the reason why is because it has the potential to completely get you reconnected back into using. If one is good, two is better, and so on and so forth. So even the individual I was speaking with today, I said, I will be having a very different conversation with you about this than I would one of my athletes who has a history of struggling with addiction. And that's the unfortunate bummer, and part of that too is even me being 26 years-ish clean and sober, is that there are still things that, I'm an adult, I could do, but I choose not to because of the potential risk of what it would do to me. And so obviously I don't flirt with those substances or those things, because I don't feel like I would even have a reason or desire to want to restart a fire that I know has been snuffed out. And so you got to be very, very, I guess, aware of what your limits are. Putting a blanket statement down saying that nothing is on the table and you can only have, complete abstinence is ludicrous. And again, this is a changing thought that I've had ever since working in the field, where we started introducing medicated assisted therapy. When this first came out, where people were using methadone and, Suboxone and those things, we were up in arms. We're like, we're going to give these people these substances that's going to help them get off substances. Right. Makes no sense. And there are those that abuse it. And there are those that it saved their lives. And so in good faith, me not being a medical doctor, I can't get up on a soapbox and say, thou shalt not ever use this. And anyone that does that, you're stuck in old times. And I hate to say that. But it's about building the relationship with the person who needs it, helping them understand the boundaries. I mean, think about this. It's like a game of play, like on Addict Athlete, right? You're playing basketball. There are these little white lines that go around the perimeter of the court that you're playing on, that if you step off of them, you are out of bounds, right? It's about teaching how the game can be played inside those bounds. And when those bounds are crossed, that's when you get called out. You get the timeout. You have to take a knee, you have to ride the bench. Maybe if you foul or you do too many personal things inside those boundaries, maybe, oh, doctor, sorry, my roommate stole all my pills. That's the third time this month that you've had that happen. I don't think so. Don't be dumb, guys. Like, whatever, if you've been in treatment, if you've been in sober living, those people that have had those situations where they got to blame, their addiction on somebody else. And, hey, doc, can you refill my prescription? Dangerous. So, you need more help. You need more assistance.
So I just have a thought. I think you're in agreement with me. But
I don't know. Let's see.
We believe in harm reduction. Mm-hmm. So if anyone listening that doesn't know what harm reduction is any way that somebody's using to try to cut down their use or make it safer to use. So, in Salt Lake, I can't remember the name of the program, but there's needle exchanges on the street helping IV heroin meth users be able to get clean needles, to be able to, a lot of people are very against it. They think it's dumb. You're just giving them, a safe opportunity to use, but it's a harm reduction. It's helping them, if they're going to use, many of them, helping them do it safer. And the program we were on a panel with a few years ago, they do counseling with it too. Yeah. So the second that's right, that person in addiction says, I want help, great, let's get rid of the clean needles, let's get you into treatment. So they just are there building that relationship. And oftentimes marijuana is harm reduction. Mm-hmm. If somebody's coming as an IV heroin user and they're just smoking weed, absolutely, that's way better than sticking a needle in their arm, way better. And because the needle will lead very much quicker to death. And the point of harm reduction is increasing life, increasing the length of their life so that they can get, maybe individuals get to the point that they want recovery.
Yeah.
But if you're doing, quote, harm reduction to get onto marijuana, to then go back to alcohol, to then go back to this, it is still a gateway drug. Or all of a sudden they're on marijuana. I know a few individuals, and you know, I'm not, you know, shooting up heroin anymore. So my life is great. I can just smoke weed every day,
Yeah.
but they sit on the couch, no job, nothing, you know, no motivation. So which is better? You know what I mean?
Well,
You don't want any. That's where it's like,
Yeah.
this is still a problem when now, yeah, they're not putting a needle in their arm, but they're not being productive. They don't have relationships. They're not getting out of the house.
well said.
They're not having a job. They're not providing. They're not even living a full and happy life. They're just
Yeah.
stuck.
But, you know, I like that a lot. And I think that we got to be very mindful of that. You know, if we could be honest with ourselves about our addictions, and if we could seriously have a conversation with ourselves about why are we doing this, oh, you guys, there's not anything you couldn't tackle. There's not anything you couldn't do. You know, just recently we were able to interview Randy Grimes, you know, an NFL football player, retired since '95, I believe, or something, the early '90s. And Randy was quoted in was it the Washington Post or the New York Times about how, you know, the NFL is lightening their stance on you know, non-medical marijuana use. So yeah, go ahead and use it. It's fine. That is the dumbest thing we can do, specifically in that arena, because of what it does to the potential abuse and the gateway factors that is youth consumption of marijuana. And I love the fact that when we were talking to him on our podcast, that, you know, we were talking it very much in the industry of adults. And he said, Blu, I did mention that part specifically about, you know, kids that get turned on to this stuff at an early age. And they didn't run that part. I wonder why. Well, because that's a whole nother can of worms no one wants to answer. But I love what Marissa's talking about the harm reduction. And it's a big deal, and it's something that we all have to be very aware of. And the old school thinking of, you know, MAT or what have you is not an answer, is, you know, you are stuck in the dark ages. And yeah, the world according to Blu, I would love for people to go ahead and do abstinence-based recovery. I think it'd be great. But the problem is it's not really applicable. It's not really, I mean, it's not really even a talking point at this stage, because would we rather have people begin to detoxify themselves and gradually step down to the point where they can function and they can be part of a family and they can heal the addictive brain, you know, and that mental addiction, and then kind of work through that physical stuff gradually? 9 times out of 10, the people that I've seen that are on long-term MAT will one day stop using it altogether. And, you know, again, it's early in its inception. And so we're still seeing a lot of these things. But I was talking to one of our athletes just recently who said, I need to be done with all of this. And I've been doing it for so long, and I've been on it for so long. I just feel that now it's time. I said, whoa, you said that before. He's like, this is why it's different. And he listed the reasons why he felt like now is the time. And he, you know, he felt like then was the time. He also realized that there were some reservations in there still. And he was very honest with himself. See, folks, addiction recovery is not as difficult as we make it out to be if we're willing to do the emotional work. And that's the biggest part of all of this, is most of us are afraid to open the cans that we tried to seal and stow away so that, you know, we didn't have to think about it. And so we continue to use to punish ourselves. And it's just a constant reminder that there's unfinished business. And that unfinished business is going to be unpleasant. Sometimes it's dealing with abuse, you know, on significant levels, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual. We have to deal with this stuff. And that's the beauty about what we do on this team, is like no one's left behind. And if you need help with that stuff, you have like resources and allies and people that have been there too. And the best resource you can do is jump on the old Addict to Athlete Facebook page and say, need some help. You know, and the cool thing about this too is when you are in motion, when you are moving, you are more prone to be able to cope with and deal with the emotional stressors than you are if you're just sitting in an office staring at a wall with a guy in a tie and a shirt. Like, it's so much better if you can move. Today I was able to go out and bike with my father-in-law, who I just absolutely love. And he and I haven't been able to bike, in years. He's living in Southern Utah now, and my bike's been, in and out of being sold and purchasing new ones. And, I started running with Addict to Athlete because, no one wanted to bike back when we started. But today was the first time I was able to bike with him. And the conversations that we had today were so amazing. They reminded me of the old days, 5 years ago when we'd go do 100-mile rides together, me and my father-in-law. And it was beautiful because I thought I could have had these same conversations in our living room, but it wouldn't have gone to the places it needed to go. And I'm a firm believer that when you get out in the open and when you're walking with your friend, or you're walking with a teammate, or you're walking, with your therapist, you're going to get more out. Part of this whole concept is what's called EMDR therapy. It's about you getting out, feet to the ground, coping and dealing with the hard stuff, being able to figure out what's going to be best for you and best for your family, so that you can build those relationships or reestablish them if they've been hurt. There's so much we can do with this, and I hope that this format, this platform is helpful. We're going to keep doing it, and so I'd love to have you guys jump on and ask these questions. They're hard, and I don't pretend to have all the answers. Like I said, if you had asked me that medical marijuana question a month ago, I'd had a very different answer for you. But I'm still kind of thinking, okay, the jury's still out. Let's see what it does. Let's see what it can do.
And again, like you said, it's so individual.
It's individualized.
And it's, as you're taking it, how are you responding to it? It's
Mm-hmm.
helpful. I mean, that's one of the things Randy said is, he said, I don't want marijuana eased into the NFL because
Mm-hmm.
I can promise you those that are doing it way too much, and they're not going to be the best player.
No.
They're not going to be
You can't.
doing the moves that they are used to. They're not going to be as quick on their feet, and they need that in the NFL.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
something has to give.
Absolutely. And if you're noticing that it's affecting your performance in job, in life, in family, absolutely it needs to be reevaluated.
Absolutely. And I remember I had a friend growing up whose dad was an alcoholic, and it would be interesting because, on the surface and behind the door, everything looked great and everything looked fantastic. And I'm like, man, your dad's so cool and all this kind of stuff. As an adult, he comes to me and says, it was hell. It was horrible. It wasn't good, and something always had to give, meaning like when dad would be present and be around, but he would be gone within the alcoholic stupor. And so it's like, as involved as his dad thought he wasn't. And so if you're using a substance, something else has to give. It's like when you're on your phone in your car. Well, multitask. No, you can't. If you're focused on your phone and you're doing 90 on the freeway, trying to weave in and out of traffic, you're going to crash. You can't do this. Something has to give. And so you got to be cautious with that. I think you're right. And because of the individuality that is, MAT, it's not a one size fits all, folks. It never has been and never will be. So what will work for one person will not work for someone else. The conversation I had with my client today was 100% because he doesn't have addiction as a precursor to any of this. I'd be having a very different conversation if it was someone that I know has struggled with addiction in the past. I'd be very cautious with introducing something such as THC or CBD into that repertoire, because you got to be so careful. But to again, to each his own. And I think that it's worth being, it's worth talking about. So Athletes One-on-One with Coach Blu every Wednesday, 7 o'clock here. We'll post this video onto the YouTube page. Share it, get it out there to people. If you have any questions after this, post on the video below. Get on our Facebook page, our webpage, addicttoathlete.org. You'll find our online resources there, numbers to contact us. Again, like we talked about at the beginning, if you're looking at becoming a certified sober coach as part of Addict to Athlete sober coaching program, we'll be starting a new class soon, and it's a 40-hour commitment. You are trained as a certified peer, specialist. We train you on how to do this, and so there's a cost that's involved, but it's also a career choice and a career move for yourself, to where you can start opening up chapters and or creating your own program to help your own community and really kind of help them turn their mess of addiction into the message of sobriety. So check out all of our online resources, our podcast. We got some awesome speakers coming up that you guys are going to love, and we feel very thankful for the folks that have been graciously willing to share their stories on here. So look forward to chatting with you guys in the future. And until then, like I said, go turn that mess into a very powerful message.